So you know how to RAG, but do you know how to GraphRAG? You're going to meet the rising AI chef in GraphRAG here at the Cozy AI Kitchen. Stay tuned. We're so lucky to have a rising GraphRAG chef, Anisha Latchman. Chef Latchman, welcome to the Cozy AI Kitchen.
Hi, Mr. Maeda. Thanks for having me.
I understand you work in security and you're an intern?
I am, yes. So in security, we're using GraphRAG to perform more efficient searches over any sort of security data. So that can be sign-in logs, network activity, email threads, anywhere where you can have a security breach. With the rise of AI, you know, there's a lot more security implications coming in. So this is a great area to work in.
And you're using graphs and embeddings.
Exactly. Graphs and embeddings are the way to perform a more effective search.
All right, let's see you cook up the GraphRAG.
Let's
Chef
do it.
Latchman.
So here we have a GraphRAG repo. GraphRAG is an open source repo maintained by Microsoft, and I'm going to show you how to run the API so you can experiment and have some fun in your home kitchen. To get started, you're going to need three things: a setting configuration file, a prompts folder, which I'll get into more later, and an input folder. So the input here is a set of emails, public emails from the company Enron and
Enron?
Enron,
Oh my goodness.
a famous company.
Okay.
And yeah, let's see how it works. So for anyone who doesn't know, GraphRAG is a way to inject private data into an LLM prompt as context, and then you can make better prompts, make better queries on top of that. So let's import our dependencies.
Does this cost any money, this API?
So the API does not cost any money, but to access LLMs, you need to connect to an Azure OpenAI resource, which does cost money. So to configure that, you connect to the settings file here. So here we're loading our settings file. And then I can show you in the settings file, this is where you specify your API resource or the API base for your OpenAI resource. So once that's all loaded up, we can review the config settings.
Just to be clear, you're like a senior in college, correct?
I am a senior in college, yes.
And you're like an expert in RAG already.
I wouldn't call myself an expert, just someone who's curious and playing around with it.
Gosh, that's very cozy. Keep going.
So this is the indexing that we're going to run here. This can take a few minutes to hours, depending on how large your input is. So I ran that in advance. And what you'll see is that it outputs an output folder with a bunch of Parquet files.
Parquet files are like...
Let's look at one and see. So you can look at the nodes that it extracted here. GraphRAG is all about building a graph off of unstructured text. So nodes, you can see that the Parquet file is kind of like a table format.
Like a node like this, connections.
Exactly, just like that. So you can see some sample nodes that it extracted, Enron, some names of people, and these things also hold relationships between each other, and that's in a different Parquet file. And the important thing here is that they each have a description, which is what we embed and then perform searches on top of.
What is that weight?
So the weight here is how important it thinks the relationship is in relationship to each other. And I think it might also be affected by how often this relationship comes up in the data set.
Interesting. So the graph contains different intensity as well.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like a weighted graph. So after you do your indexing and you have your output Parquet files, you can query on top of that. So you have to load your Parquet files into memory, and then we can ask a query. So we're going to ask, what are the top 3 themes in these emails, and how do they evolve over time? So what we expect here is that the baseline RAG will be able to answer this question, but it won't be able to draw higher level connections as well as something that has a graph relationship in it.
So baseline RAG doesn't use the graph.
No. Baseline RAG only uses semantic search. So it has vector chunks, and that's what it searches for the most relevant semantic match. But GraphRAG is able to find these high-level connections, and it does something cool called community search, which...
Community search, like a TV show? No.
No. But it finds groups of related nodes, kind of like a little subgraphs. And that is what you might look at as themes or overarching connections. So while that's running, we can take a look at this prompt folder that I hinted at earlier. And these are basically the prompts to every LLM call that is made in the indexing pipeline.
Oh, so it's transparent.
It's very transparent. You can look at everything and you can modify it too, which is very interesting.
Open source.
Open source, it's the best part. So let's take a look at the entity extraction prompt.
Oh, wow.
So as you can see, it basically tells the LLM exactly what you would do as a human, but in very plain language instructions, it is able to extract nodes and entities from unstructured text.
Cool.
I think when I was first learning about this, the prompts and prompt tuning was the most interesting part to me because it takes all this complex logic and basically turns it into natural language instructions.
As a computer science background person, how do you take this prompting thing?
I think it's interesting. I know a lot of people talk about like prompt engineering as a new engineering. I think it's maybe a subset of a larger toolkit that we'll need in the future.
I hear it's called context engineering now.
Context engineering, I think it's all similar words, similar things. So let's see if this is done. Not yet. So we can look at another Parquet file. So these text units are the smallest chunking unit that we use to break up a larger document. And that allows us to kind of work in parallel and compute on more chunks at the same time.
We often talk about chunking strategies in RAG. What's your take on that?
Chunking strategies. I think that you can configure different token limits and different things like that to adjust how your document is chunked up. But at the end of the day, you kind of just need a smaller unit to perform operations on, and that makes it easier to draw connections from at the end.
Big chunks not good.
Big chunks not as good. Otherwise, you would just have the first document you started with. And okay, so our queries are done. So let's go check them out in the response folder. So this is basic search. So again, let's remember the question we asked it. We asked, what are the top themes in the emails and how did they evolve over time?
This is basic RAG, no graph.
No graph, baseline RAG. So here you can see it talks about workplace coordination, task management, personal social interactions. And I mean, it's a good answer. It gave you an answer, which is good. But if you look at global search, you might find that there are some more higher level answers that are being brought up.
This is with graph.
With graph, I'm about to show you, yes. So this is the answer with GraphRAG. And if you read a little closely, you can see that it kind of somehow finds these it finds different organizations that exist, like the Federal Energy Regulatory. It finds different levels of management that exist in these emails. And it finds different higher level topics and kind of issues that exist that maybe weren't exactly written in the text. So even if there's no direct semantic matches, GraphRAG is able to find these higher connections somehow.
They find it in the graph.
In the graph, because it can traverse the graph and kind of find a match and then search out from that match to a certain degree and find even more related context.
Well, Chef Latchman, for all the rising seniors and soon to graduate people out there who are wondering how to cook with AI, do you have any advice for them?
I think the advice I would give is something I heard at an intern talk I went to recently by Sarah Bond, the president of Xbox. She basically said AI is a technology, not an outcome. So the question becomes not what is AI taking from us, but instead what can we build with, what kind of outcomes can we make with this new tool? So I think when you look at it like that as a building block, you open yourself up to more possibilities and you have a more optimistic and hopeful outlook.
I love your GraphRAG recipe. Everyone try it out. Thank you, Chef Latchman. Always be cooking.